you ever wonder why the smartest people you know are often the quietest in the room? Why they disappear from group chats, skip parties, and vanish from social media for weeks? It's not because they've given up on the world. It's because they've seen it for what it really is. They've peeled back the noise, the masks, the performances, and what they found wasn't worth staying plugged into 24/7. These are the people who've stared into the chaos and chosen peace instead, who no longer chase crowds because they've realized that most crowds are running from themselves. They've tasted solitude and discovered it's not emptiness, it's power. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to feel that way too. People like this learn to enjoy their own company, not because they hate others, but because they see clearly what most people never pause long enough to realize, that crowds often blur our thoughts, dilute our purpose, and pull us into noise we never asked for. They are not antisocial, they are introspective. They're the quiet observers at the edges of the party, the ones who leave early not out of arrogance, but because they've already taken in all they need. They don't speak much, not because they lack words, but because they choose silence over superficiality. They crave depth. And when depth can't be found, they retreat, not in defeat, but in clarity. And maybe that's something you've felt too. Maybe you've found yourself at gatherings where your body was present, but your soul wasn't. Where everyone talked, but no one really said anything. Where you felt more alone in a room full of people than you did walking alone at dusk, listening to the wind speak truths no one else could hear. That feeling? That's not loneliness. That's your intelligence craving alignment. It's the part of you that knows life is short, time is sacred, and energy is currency. That part doesn't want to spend itself on empty laughter or gossip about people who aren't even present. It wants to build, to create, to reflect, to grow. And yet society often looks at this desire for solitude and says, something's wrong with you. But what if that's not true at all? What if the problem isn't your distance, but the world's obsession with distraction? Schopenhauer once observed that the more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. Intelligent people sense the weight of existence. They feel the profound questions tugging at their minds. Why are we here? What matters? Who am I without the mask? Those questions can't be answered in loud rooms or crowded clubs. They require silence, space, solitude. They require something society often fears, being alone with your thoughts. But being alone with your thoughts is exactly where transformation begins. Because when the noise fades and there's no one left to impress, what remains is the raw, unfiltered truth of who you really are. And that's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Because in that silence, highly intelligent people start to uncover their deepest values. They realize that their discomfort in shallow conversations isn't a flaw, it's a compass, pointing them away from the trivial and toward the meaningful. They begin to understand that not everyone is meant to walk with them, that some paths are narrow by design, that elevation requires isolation, and that sometimes the best way to connect with the world is to step away from it. So they stop chasing invitations, they stop explaining their absences, they stop apologizing for their solitude. Because now they see it for what it is, a sanctuary. In that sanctuary they read, write, think, and create. They analyze patterns others don't notice. They develop inner worlds so rich that being alone never feels like a punishment. It feels like coming home. And maybe the most beautiful part? They learn to be fully present with themselves, to sit with their joy, their pain, their confusion, their clarity, without distraction, without the need for someone else to validate it. This is where they grow, not in performance, but in presence, not in noise, but in nuance, not in company, but in contemplation. They start to value people who bring peace over people who bring entertainment. They seek relationships that are quiet, but real. Not flashy, not loud, not performative, just honest, safe, steady. Because once you've tasted the peace of solitude, you stop craving the chaos of the crowd. You stop needing to be seen all the time. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. You stop needing to constantly explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Because now you understand yourself, and that understanding, that changes everything. You realize that your solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. It's you choosing to live in harmony with your values instead of in conflict with the crowd. It's you refusing to dilute your essence just to fit into places you've outgrown. You begin to protect your time like it's sacred. You no longer give it to just anyone with a smile and a loud voice. You start and measure relationships, not by how fun they are, but by how safe, how deep, how honest they feel. And when you do step into the world, you do so with intention. You're no longer chasing approval. You're offering presence. You're no longer seeking attention. You're seeking resonance. You're not trying to fit in. You're trying to find what fits you. That's the quiet revolution of a thoughtful mind. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need the spotlight. It just needs space. Space to breathe, to think, to become. You start seeing through people, not out of arrogance, but from clarity. You've been around enough manipulation, enough half-truths, enough charm that conceals chaos. You recognize when someone's words don't match their energy, when they smile with their mouth, but not with their eyes, and you stop entertaining it. You don't argue. You don't try to fix them. You don't even warn them. You just leave, quietly, decisively, without a single announcement. Because you finally accepted this one truth. Not everyone deserves access to you. Let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. Let them paint you as the villain in their fragile narratives. People will always twist the truth to protect their ego. That's not your business. Your business is healing, growing, protecting your energy like it's sacred. Because it is. You've sat in rooms where you felt like a stranger. You've been in relationships that drained you. You've smiled through disrespect. You've swallowed truths just to keep the atmosphere light. And one day you looked around and asked yourself, what am I doing here? That moment was your awakening, and since then, everything's changed. Now you see silence as power, absence as a message, boundaries as love. You no longer fight for seats at tables where you're constantly misunderstood. You stop trying to make people see your heart when they've already decided to judge your history. You stop giving explanations to people who never cared to understand you in the first place. You stop breaking yourself down into bite-sized pieces just to be digestible to people who lack the appetite for depth. You stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop defending your past to those who never asked about your pain. You stop explaining your growth to people who only remember your mistakes. Because at some point, you realize Your energy is sacred, and not everyone is worthy of it. Some people want to keep you in a box because it's easier for them. Your transformation challenges their comfort. Your healing makes them uncomfortable. Your confidence exposes their insecurities. Your boundaries make them feel exposed. So instead of clapping for you, they question you. Instead of supporting your growth, they mock it. Not because you're wrong, but because they're not ready to grow. And that's fine. You're not here to drag anyone with you. You're here to become all that God created you to be. And that requires letting go of dead weight, no matter how familiar it feels. So you let them talk, you let them laugh, you let them gossip, you let them assume, and you keep building in silence, in peace, in truth. You pour your energy into what feeds your soul, not what drains it. You become more obsessed with inner peace than with proving a point. You become more invested in your purpose than in being understood. You start to see that the more you elevate, the less you need to explain. You become grounded, rooted, calm, because you're not living for their approval. You're living for alignment. And people who are aligned with your purpose, they won't need an explanation. They'll just get it. If this is hitting home, make sure you subscribe for more real talk just like this, because we're just getting started.